Welcome back to Emotional Mojo. You know, more than 1 million people are arrested each year for driving under the influence of alcohol. What happens if you take the chance? You drink a little too much, you're arrested for a DUI? Well, joining us to share his story is David Koch. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And you know, this is something, I don't know, you probably weren't all that comfortable at first telling the world about this, right?
Right.
Why do it?
Well, I had two choices. I made a mistake, and I thought about it, and I had two choices of either kind of keep my head low and wait for it to pass, or raise my hand and take accountability for it and try to explain to people what happens when you make the mistake that I made.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're putting yourself out there, becoming vulnerable to tell the story, because I think a lot of people have had DUIs and have been in your shoes.
And the book is not this huge novel. I mean, it's what, 30-something pages. I mean, but the message is so powerful. I mean, can you kind of share maybe the Cliff Notes version of your story? So, I mean, you were like on top of the world at this time, right? You were in New Jersey for a job interview. It went amazingly. And you had some downtime between going to the airport to go home. What happened in that downtime?
Well, I mean, I had time between my last interview and my flight home, and made a mistake that I've been regretting ever since, and drank too much and got behind the wheel of a car. And I didn't think about the ramifications or the consequences of the risk that I was taking when I took it. And when I was arrested for DUI, I thank God every day that I didn't hurt anybody.
It was a fender bender.
Yeah. But I could have, and the more I thought about it, and the more the ramifications and the consequences just kind of started covering me like a wet blanket, I thought that it was important for other people to understand that might take the same risk, that it's not just a harsh speeding ticket that they're risking if they get behind the wheel after having a few drinks. They're risking their careers, they're risking their financial the ability to pay the bills, the amount of time, the legal issues, all of that kind of wrapped up into a big, giant, wet blanket that covers you. People need to know that, so they don't take the risk.
And you mentioned career and finances and all that. I mean, it's been over a year now since this happened, but you still had to deal with it throughout that year, right? Can you give us some examples of what you mean by how it can kind of follow you? Yeah,
well, it's a cascade, and that's what I mentioned in the book. It doesn't stop. I mean, you start with an arrest, and then you've got the legal process that you got to go through with getting lawyers and dealing with court dates, and then trying to get into certain programs like the PTI program. There's DUI school. There's community service. There's the probation calls with your probation officer. All of these things. Losing your license for 6 months. In the state of New Jersey, you're required to lose your license for 6 months.
Which is huge.
That's
I mean, when you drive every day to your job. So what happened to you from an employment and a personal perspective?
Well, and that's the big one. I had worked for a large medical device company for 18 years and was let go following this incident. It was a Class 1 violation to the company, and many companies have a zero tolerance policy.
Especially if you're in sales and you're driving around to go meet clients.
And even if there wasn't a zero tolerance, it would have been very difficult for me to do my job without a license.
Yeah, right. And I think it's very interesting because from a mental health perspective, I know what comes along with that are a lot of adjustment disorder issues and depression and anxiety. Did you have to experience any of that going through this slippery slope process?
If you ask my wife, I have many mental problems. No, it was a challenge because you wake up one day and you don't have a job that you've had for 18 years, and you've got all of the things that you've got to manage, the time, and you've got to make sure you do everything to the letter, or you potentially could be standing in front of the judge again.
And you mentioned little things like in your family life, going on a vacation, you don't have a license, you got to make sure you have your passport with you all the time. You get somewhere and you want to rent a car, and then that's an issue. So I can understand that trickle-down effect. And with this many people being arrested for DUIs, I mean, do you think that punishment is fair, that it's drawn out like that? I know we have statistics too of just the number of people this happens to.
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair?
Well, it's harsh. In terms of fairness, I think it's only going to get harsher. 150 million people, over 150 million people will drive impaired in the United States each year and not get caught. 1.5 million are actually caught. That's about 1%. And that number right there, it doesn't sit well with law enforcement and with the legal system. So punishment is not going to get lessened. It's going to get more and more severe. And 10 years ago, if you're caught drinking and driving, a lot of times a police officer might say, just get home safe.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
today
Very
that
true.
doesn't happen.
Was there one defining moment for you after all of this that started to change your life and shift the
Because you
cascade
kind of
down?
found that
Yeah.
silver lining now
Yeah.
with this
Right.
book. You're spreading a great message.
Yeah, and it was kind of sitting at my desk and dealing with attorneys and dealing with you know, the different things. My life insurance, my car insurance getting canceled and having to get high risk insurance and all that. I just said, you know what, I've got time now. I don't have a job. I don't have a license. So I'm confined to my home office. I might as well write about it and try to help others at least understand the risk that they're taking so they don't take the risk having no idea what the ramifications
You know what Jada likes to call that?
A
reframe. And you, my friend, have done an excellent job
yes.
of that. And I really hope that this book will help change some lives from people. I know for me, I mean, I just sped through it. 30-something
Yeah.
pages, easy
Yeah.
to do, but the message, especially this time of year, I think it's a great one to spread around as people are going to holiday parties and whatnot and wondering whether
Yep.
they should drive home. Just call a cab or a
Yep.
friend.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And his book is available online right now, so you guys can check that out.